This is another great episode where we break down more level design tips as I'm joined by a brilliant and wonderful guest. Hey everyone, I hope you're well, playing and or making the games that you all love. You're joined by me, your host, Max Pez, but not just me. I've got a very special guest for us today, someone to help us with more great level design tips. And this is none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Oliver William Walker.
What can I say? When you asked me to do the podcast, I was anticipating wonderful intros, and you have absolutely met my expectations. So thank you ever so much.
So it's great to have you here, mate. An absolute pleasure for me to have you on the show.
Dude, likewise, it's my pleasure to be here.
So now that we've got you here, mate, I've got a couple questions for you, mate, just to get us into the groove of this.
Absolutely, okay.
Do you first want to give an introduction to who you are, mate?
Cool. So my name is Oliver William Walker. I've been making games and studying games for about 6 years, and I've been in the industry for sort of 14 months now professionally. I've done a couple of little projects professionally before this one, but this is my first full-time gig, and I've been doing this for, like I said, 14 months at Just Add Water Developments, and we're working on a brand new Sniper Elite game for VR platforms, which is really exciting project, really brilliant sort of first thing to be on straight out of university.
Awesome. I think that's a really cool one there because, like I said, a great one to be on a well-established franchise, as well as to be working on, another new frontier for level design.
Absolutely, man.
And then I guess the first question, well, the second question now, I guess, but the first one to kick us off to know more about you, mate, would be, how did you get into the industry?
So I studied game design at college and then at university. So my college course really gave me a brilliant foundation. It taught me everything from 3D modeling to scripting to engine skills, all those brilliant things that you really need a fundamental grasp on before you can enter the games industry. And I studied at Stafford College, and it was a brilliant course, and I can't thank the lecturers there enough. They did such an amazing job at shaping me into the professional that I am today. And then following my college course, I went to university at Teesside, and I studied at Teesside for 3 years. And at Teesside, it really taught me all the fundamental schools of game design. So UI design, level design, prototyping, all those crucial schools that you should be aware of as a level designer. And while I was there, I really doubled down on the prototyping and the getting stuff playable fast and polishing. Those were my critical skills really while I was there. And then after that, it was a lot of networking and a lot of game jams, and those things led me on to my professional job today at Just Add Water.
Yeah, man, no, that's cool. I think that's some great points, and the two, I guess overplayed ones by now, but I think it's important is as you're saying, you networked a lot to help get you to know people. I mean, that's we met at a networking event. And then also, you doing your own thing with game jams and smaller projects before. And I think that's always important. And not only that, but like you getting them to a playable level.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like the game jams and networking, it's kind of a cliche at this point, when you're hearing advice, but you don't really realize until you've done it how valuable and useful those things are.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I also wanted to touch upon something you just mentioned as well, which is the prototyping, because that's such a valued, or I should say valuable skill, in the sense that, people are often scared to show things until it's, completed, it's final stages, but for you to, as you're saying, get something to just a playable level, have the core game loop, I think is just great advice as well.
Absolutely, couldn't couldn't agree more. It's one of my favorite things. Getting something playable, getting the feedback, and then listening to what people say, adding that stuff, changing stuff. It's brilliant. It really is one of my favorite parts of game development.
Yeah, man, I think that's such some great tips there, and I think prototyping, I don't think that's mentioned enough, because you don't have to get a fully fledged game, and I know you got stuff up on Steam prior to getting, into this, but just having something that you can just hand to someone is such an important and beneficial element for you as a candidate.
Absolutely. People love playable games. People love it when, like, you're the guy who's like, oh, come check my build out. Can I send you a build, or can do you want to, like, even if you just pull out a tablet and you're like, oh, check this out. I've been working on this recently. That's how you stick out in people's memory.
Yeah, for sure, man. I couldn't agree more. And then the third one will be, mate, how have you found your first year, 14 months, should I say, in the industry, and how does it compare to that of studying at university?
It is dramatically different from when you're studying. I was a game student for quite a long time, and I loved it and I learned so much, but professionally it is a different kettle of fish.
Yes.
There's a lot of different expectations, and you have to be ready for those challenges that come, because realistically, the preparation you get at university, there's no way they can teach you everything that you need to learn to do the job. You'll have to learn a hell of a lot while you're working professionally, and just be ready for that. Be prepared for those things.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's things that, I guess, especially like the day-to-day things, cannot always be taught,
Yes.
And I think that's an important part, as you're saying, is do be aware what you learn at university doesn't always mean that you know everything walking into the actual job itself.
Oh my word, no way. Yeah, like even doing a college course and a university course, I have learned a hell of a lot while actually doing this professionally. Like so many lessons. I keep a little notebook on my desk that is called it's called Lessons What I Did Learn.
Yeah.
And it is humbling, like how much there is out there to learn sometimes.
Yeah.
It can be daunting, but each day is, you learn something new each day, and you keep going for that goal, which is, the mastery of what you do. You might never get there, but
No.
it's important to try to be the best that you can be professionally, and always be learning.
For sure, man. I think there's, you're always going to be learning on this job, and as you're saying, taking down notes, and especially your first few years. I always try to explain it, in terms of different roles of, like, your junior is like, make those mistakes, find those mentors, and just learn as much as you can. And then when you get to your intermediate specialist, it's then you picking and choosing from what you've learned from your junior stages, what is the best fit for you? What are the lessons that are the most important for you, and how do you, maybe there's things that you don't agree with, or things that you think can change, and then mold that to your way, and then you find your way of design.
Absolutely, that's a fantastic perspective. There's a lot that you have to take in when you start professionally. For me, when I was first starting out, milestones were really scary. Really scary. Because you get in, and you've dealt with deadlines while you're at university, of course, but there's nothing that quite prepares you for when you get that slip on your whatever your company's project management software is, and it's like, this is the amount of time you've got. It needs to be done for this. Obviously things slip and things sometimes run over, or you finish things early, but it can be really intimidating at first when you see those things, and you see those deadlines, but you just have to take it on the chin, and it's a reality of development, really.
No, I agree, and that's a big one. A funny story with me was, again, I didn't quite have a grasp of it, and my leader would always come over and be like, so how long do you think it's going to take to do this location? And then I'd give, because I had no idea. I hadn't used the tools. I kind of had a rough sort of estimation, but I didn't fully know in terms of the answers.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
for like the next 3 months, it was a running joke that for the small tasks I'd give too much time, and for like the big task I'd give too little times. To the point where my leader was like, "You have no idea, do you?" And I was like, "No." So we'll figure this out when I do a few of these. I'll give you better answers. And to the
Oh,
point it did
fantastic.
after,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's a funny one.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I can really relate to that because when someone does come over and asks you how long is something going to take, and you're fresh to the job, you've not got a huge amount of experience, it can be you feel pressured to give a time. You feel pressured to give an answer, and what that can lead to sometimes is just giving an answer that you think that it's the right answer in the moment, but
Yeah.
you start doing the task and you trip over something, or something takes a little longer than you expected, and you're like, oh no, I said this is going to be done in like 2 days.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's one of those things, but I think it's an important one for people to know.
Hmm.
But I also think always give yourself a little bit more time, especially when you're just starting, because you're not as fast as say someone who's at a senior level. But that's an important thing to, like, say, one of the big things that is a change to the system.
Yeah, there are a few other things as well, like you have to be ready to do a little bit of things that are out your comfort zone. You might not be 100% confident in are you able to do this task? You might get a task and you'll be like, I don't know the tools this particularly well. I don't know the ins and outs of this environment. I've never designed a space like this before. You will be asked to do stuff that you might not be completely comfortable with. And to be honest with you, most of the time, I find myself a little bit out of my comfort zone, whether it's designing a space in a complex environment, or whether it's scripting a mission that's particularly complex. These challenges, you have to be ready for them, and you have to accept them. And the best advice I have for it is you just have to charge that front. You have to just go. You have to go all out. You have to say, this I'm gonna give everything I've got.
Yes.
And there's no harm in asking for help, but
No.
you should really go for it. Really attack these problems, and try not to let your nerves get the better of you.
Yeah, you said it. You said it perfectly, mate. I couldn't agree more. With it, and as you say, you're only going to get put in more uncomfortable situations as time goes through with it.
Jeez, don't like the sound of that as my humble as a humble junior. But
no, man. Like, the thing is obviously the better you get, the more work that you're going to be given, and therefore it's a good thing. But it does have times where you're like, what? Because you're just scared, like saying, like, you get given tasks and you're like, yeah, I can do this, because you do believe you can, but then you'll sit at your desk and be like,
yeah. Yeah. So sometimes you'll just be at your desk and you'll be given a challenge, and the challenge is essentially sometimes what it boils down to is produce a compelling level, and that is that blank page, essentially, as it were.
Yeah.
Scary. It's a scary thing, but you can't let that. You just can't let it take over and better you. You have to go for it.
Mate. That's everyone gets scared of that blank page. That's for sure. All right then, mate. Because we've kind of gone through some good stuff there. As this episode is primarily about level design tips to help people. You've got some good ones ahead. Just want to know if you want to go through and talk about them, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'll focus on level design. That's not all I do in my role, but it is one of the core elements of my day-to-day. A lot of this is going to be stuff that is really good to pick up when you're going through yourself and you're learning about level design and you're beginning as a professional. But this is all stuff that I wish I'd been aware of when I was starting. Cool. So, to kick it off, let's talk about level metrics. So, I wasn't particularly aware of this until I started professionally, but everything from the sizes of your doors to the distance between cover, it's important to have a baseline for all these things. For us, working in VR, a big one that we have to deal with is the angle of a slope or the angle of stairs. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So, because if the slope is too steep, it can cause undue motion sickness. So you have, yeah, exactly. So we basically have a bunch of parameters and a bunch of values that we say slopes no steeper than this, and we have a bunch of different templates to use, so stuff to work from. It's just something to be aware of. Level metrics are extremely useful when you're doing your white boxing and stuff, and every level designer needs to be aware of them. Fundamentally, it's critical.
No, I couldn't agree more. And like you, when I started, I had no idea as well. So if there is someone, beginning their career, do think about metrics,
Absolutely. Awesome. So the next thing I'd like to talk about would be your scale. This goes hand in hand with level metrics, really. So there's loads of great ways to do this, from actually playing through your levels with your player character or looking through it in first person. Or you can drag things from your level metrics into the scene. For example, you can drag a character around the environment to see, how big should I make this rock? How big should this building be?
No. I think I want to talk a bit more on this one. I imagine it's a very interesting one for you guys as well, working in VR. But one of the things I've learned, and it depends on your camera. For the game you're working on right now, and for my game, they're both first-person perspective. But one of the most interesting things about that is when you're in the editor, if your field of view in the editor does not match that of the camera, it can, when you're flying through your level, just talking about with someone, can put them off by being like, oh, this is way too big, or this is way too small. So I think with building on scale, make sure when you're in the editor that the scale, the field of view of all that does match what the end game will represent as well, as I think that's an important part to make sure scale is represented correctly.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. That's a brilliant point, actually. Yeah, because whatever modeling software you use versus your game engine, there might also be field of view discrepancies.
Well there, mate, with that.
So your scene might actually look drastically different versus how you've seen it in your modeling software. It can creep up on you, that can actually, and you should be aware of it.
I agree, man. It's a small detail, and like I said, I didn't process it right away. It took me a few years to grasp that, because again, if you're working in third person or isometric, it's obviously slightly different, but especially it should be made sure that the field of view does try to represent your in-game camera. Awesome, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is something I've been wrangling with professionally recently as well.
It must be a very different one for you, especially in VR, because that must be a whole other experience looking at the editor to testing your actual work.
Yeah, the testing cycle is critical for us. Absolutely. So on my most recent level, I've tested it. Maybe today alone, I must have tested at least sort of 6 or 7 full playthroughs of the level. Especially in the mission scripting phase, there's a lot of playtesting involved.
I can imagine on that one, and how important it must be. Like saying, with a different technology,
Oh yeah. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is sort of like a classic level design mantra and sort of thing that is often talked about when you're starting out with a beginner. It's to do with making everything a box and putting everything on the grid. It's a common mistake when people are starting out, and it's a piece of advice that I got. And my early levels, especially when I was first starting professionally, a lot of boxes everywhere. Different sizes boxes, all this stuff, everything on the grid. And I do agree with that advice. It is good advice for a beginner, but the problem with it is it can lead to you thinking that nothing should be on the grid or a box.
Yeah.
And that's also not true, because you don't want everything to look like a Quake level or a Doom level. You know, real spaces do have boxes and straight corridors and regular door frames and that sort of thing. So, you know, take that one with a pinch of salt and, you know, think about the real space, think about your real world reference, and, you know, don't go all the way one way, don't go all the way the other.
No, I want to build on that one, mate, because it's like I say, it's a classic one, but you've brought up the valid point of when some people take it to an extreme, and it is okay to have boxes, you know, like. And the other thing that I think to help you with this, because I got this tidbit advice not long ago, but if you are building a level and it's based in the real world, imagine that this is a plot of land. Someone has bought a plot of land. They're not gonna, and if they have bought this, you know, X square meters and that, they're gonna try use the most of it that they can. They're not just gonna have these random indents and weird angles and then not use that space because now it's just empty or wasted space. So as you're saying, mate, like, make sure it makes sense. Don't just have things slightly aligned to have an indent for the sake of an indent, or angle a wall, because sometimes look, I'm a big advocate of angled walls because they help with leading lines and help with
absolutely, but they are really useful. But yeah, I know exactly where you're going with this.
Like if you just put too many, it becomes like, what that doesn't exist.
Why? You know, you have to think. You do have to think about the realism of the space.
Yeah. So that's it, mate. So just make sure it makes sense. And if you were an owner of this space, would you have all this unnecessary empty space? So yeah, it's a tough one to balance. Make sure you do your research and reference gathering to help with that. But yeah, don't be afraid of a box, but don't be afraid to break things up. And like you say, you don't need to just break it up with just angles. You can break it up with height variation. You can break it up with like having certain spaces just blocked off, like certain, you know, you can cut into space with areas that the player can never get into to help make it feel less boxy as well. You know, so that's a really good point, man. I'm glad you expanded on that one.
Yeah, I like that one. It's really interesting to think about. But yeah, this one leads quite nicely onto something else I'd like to talk about, which would be sort of maps, references, and understanding the space.
Right.
You know, starting with your blanket Google search, where you're just going through, you're just getting as much stuff as you can, different angles, different perspectives, different kind of things, like a really in-depth look at what else exists in the real world. You can look at video games as well, but I tend to go for real-world reference. It just helps ground things in my opinion. And then once you've done that, you should your paper maps. You might need to make them for your, you know, you might be asked to make them by your leads, but really what you should be getting out of your paper maps is, how do I understand this space? Like, where are the elevations? Where's the player going to go? How are enemies going to spawn? You have to consider all these things when you're building your spaces, and that's what the paper map is for. You as a designer in that phase, you should be thinking through every step of the level. You should be thinking through the player journey. You should be thinking through your sort of level beats. All these really useful things. The map phase is your time to explore those before you enter. Yes, so the crucial part of the map phase, in my opinion, is it's your time as a designer to think through and understand the space. You should spend that time thinking about the player journey, where are you going to spawn enemies from, thinking through the process and the play experience of the level. The pen and paper map stage, and even when you move, maybe you want to do your maps digitally in Photoshop or something, that can be really helpful as well. But that time, you need to think through the space and how you intend the player to experience it, because that time is really valuable for thinking through the player journey before you enter the white boxing phase.
There's a lot to obviously think about as well. I think that's as you've mentioned some great points there. There is just a lot that goes into it, you know.
Yeah, there's so much to think about, you know. Okay. I quite like to structure my initial thoughts and my initial plans, because when I was first starting, it was very intimidating, you know, that blank phase. So I like to think step by step. I like to do a level beats, you know, what's each section of the level. I know you like to
Pacing
do
graphics.
actual engagement graphs, don't you? Where you have yeah, pacing graph. They can be really useful as
Mm,
well. It's
yeah.
You have to think about what you find useful, really. Um, because some things will work for you and then others won't. Maybe you like to spend a little bit more time in the pen and paper phase, or maybe you want to spend more time on the written side of things.
Yeah. I think that brings a great point. Is like not only just people work differently, but studios work very differently. I
Oh yeah.
remember speaking to someone from Naughty Dog, and they don't even do paper design. I don't think. If I've misquoted, someone please call me out. But I just remember speaking to one person who's like, "Oh, we don't do it. We just go straight into the blocking out." That's fine. It's completely, like you said, completely up to you. But
Mhm.
if you still feel comfortable, like that, you want to do pen and paper, do. You know what I mean? Like you said, this is your process,
Mhm.
and really, you've got time to perfect it. There's things where I went away from 2D maps for a while, and now I've come back to it again. You
Mhm.
know, so all that stuff, as you're saying, is right, mate. It's finding the right one for you.
Yeah. It's all about that evolving, process and craft.
Yeah.
Depending on what space you're doing, you're going to your design process and the way you tackle it can be different.
Yes. Exactly. And I think that brings up another one of like, just because you've spent your time on this doesn't mean that it's concrete and solid. Like
Oh yeah.
if it needs to change because maybe something feels off putting in the 3D version of it, or it doesn't seem to work, then don't be afraid to change that.
Oh yeah. That's a great point. The ability to change and adapt. Especially when art get involved and
Mm.
other departments, and you get feedback and criticism. You can't be married to, you know, certain elements of your level. You need to be
Yeah.
able to transition and move forwards and make the best level possible. And often the best way to do that is listening to the people that are around you and listening to the level itself.
Couldn't agree more, mate. Spawn. It takes a lot of people to make a level.
Oh yeah,
It takes a village to
absolutely.
raise a child, and a lot of people to make a good level.
I know that childhood mantra,
Yeah,
yes, too well.
that's it. Were you
Yeah.
just abandoned and left to a village growing up?
No,
You don't know me.
you don't know me. Um, oh dear. But so another thing that I've found really useful, and over the over the year I come and go, and I do more and less of this sometimes, but
Hmm.
I find level design theory and sort of articles and
Yeah,
books, those things are a really brilliant grounding. Everything from your rational level design, your intentionality, leading lines, weenies, all that really good stuff. It's brilliant to know it, and when you can when you can take the time to do it in your downtime, it's really good research, and it is a
yeah,
really fantastic grounding. Yeah, those things they've really helped me professionally. And
yeah.
everyone has something to teach you.
Oh, for sure. No matter what the experience is, everyone's got a unique way of looking at things, which,
Hmm.
as you say, is something to learn from. So, yeah, great point there.
For sure. Um, this one's a bit tricky because it comes naturally to some people and then not so much to others. So criticism, feedback, and critique. So those can be it can be a challenge sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, when someone comes to you and is like, "Oh, I don't like this about your level," or "This needs changing," or you can take it personally when you're first starting.
Mm.
It can feel like they're criticizing you, but that's not really what they're doing at all. They just want to see the best version of that level, and they want to see the best game possible. So
Yes.
you just need to welcome the feedback, um, and just be open and respectful and professional, because that's what you are. You're a level designer and you're a professional,
Yeah.
and those things are really important.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. And he said it is nerve wracking that those nerves still don't always go away. There's
No.
still times, I've been 6 years and I'm still like, oh. But,
Mm,
you're bang on right. No one's doing it to be mean, or if they are, you're working at the wrong place. But everyone wants to see things get better, and I think the problem is we tie our self-worth to our, for us, our levels as to their art, and like
We do, yeah, it's true.
that's not the case. You are still a worthy person. Now we're going deep psychological stuff on this one, but you are still good, no matter what. There are still the best level designers.
Really, yeah. Really, because really, fundamentally, everyone on your team wants to see the best version of the game ship.
Yeah.
That is absolutely true.
For sure, man. No, exactly. So yeah, it's a great point, and hopefully, you do hear this, because it's, as I said, it's always nerve-wracking, but knowing that your work's going to get better, and also I think building on that, like, be a professional about it. If there's something that you think needs to stay, or maybe there's a change that you don't agree with, and like, don't just do it because you're like, well, no, this was my idea. Do it because you feel it's beneficial for the level. Then don't be afraid to argue your case. When we're saying this, we don't mean like take every critique and be like, yep, I'll change everything. It is important, listen to it, but don't be afraid to speak up if you have a disagreement and state why.
It's all about that integrity, in your work and in your craft. It's so important. You said that fantastically.
Yeah, man. Well, awesome point, mate. Awesome point.
So complex spaces as a level designer, like, it can be really hard to judge what isn't a complex space sometimes.
By complex space, what do you mean specifically, mate?
So when you're initially given sort of your theme or where the level is going to be set, or a piece of information to sort of begin your level design process, some spaces are more complex than others.
Yes.
So, for example, streets can be really challenging.
Yeah.
A lot of metrics involved, and it can be really hard to get them believable. And even harder to get them playing well. There's a really really challenging balance when it comes to city streets. I've done some street scenes recently on this current project, and oh my goodness, they were really hard spaces. I think they've actually been the most complex spaces I've had to tackle professionally. And I did not anticipate this at all. I did not expect them to be quite so difficult. And I think when you're starting out, it's really difficult to tell what is and isn't complex.
I agree. I think it's interesting because I've rambled on about this way too much, but I finished the course, CMGA course of level design, and we had to do a street for one of the tasks, and it was the one that I was probably my worst hand in, because it's one that, again, I find difficult, and not even just some of the points you made there, but then you've got like long lines of sight. How do you break that up?
Yeah.
And then there's certain buildings, like how, especially like on the Division, because New York is all based on a grid, and for example, you can't do weenies in New York because everything is so vertical. And
my God, yeah.
Two, not many players look up. There's a big talk about it, and I've seen loads of this on Twitter and articles about, like, it's really hard to make a player look up. And
it is.
Like you're saying, how do you make the house or building that you want to stand out? If it's built on a grid. So completely agree. Streets are harder than you think, like way harder.
Oh yeah. That was a real like cold bucket to the face when I was doing the street scene, because I'd been doing the job for a while. I thought I'd found my feet with level design stuff, and that one just absolutely knocked me for six.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just important to make those considerations when you're designing your levels. Some spaces are more complex than others, and you need to remember that. It's really important.
Yeah. No, I agree. And as you say, like cold bucket to the face, which is a great metaphor there. Sorry, simile, because you said like. Someone calls me out on my bad grammar in English, but it's always interesting with level design because you're always going to get that. There is always one, and I've spoken to like friends before. Sometimes you just get given a level, and it takes multiple iterations to get right, and you know that's also okay. That is okay.
Oh yeah.
You know? If it's for every level, then yeah, okay, there's a problem. But there's always going to be some that just go super smoothly, and others that just feel like they're dragging their feet.
Oh yeah, that's so true. Yeah, absolutely. Like I've experienced that professionally, and you know, it can be a bit nerve-wracking sometimes when something doesn't work out, but you know that it's going to get better, and you know it's not a problem most of the time. You know, people understand these things and they know the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Next I'd like to talk about sort of collaborating with environment artists. So this is a tricky section to cover in like a quick tip. I genuinely think this could be like you could do a whole episode on this one, but basically just remember that you as a designer and the artist, you kind of come at it from very different perspectives. Artists want to see the most beautiful space, and you want to see the best gameplay. Sometimes those things line up, other times they don't, and you just have to be ready for them to add things and want to remove things, and you have to be ready for that collaboration.
Yes.
It can be difficult, it can be really challenging, but it is so worth getting it right because you can make brilliant, beautiful levels that play amazingly, and that's what collaboration is all about.
Yeah, agreed, mate. Agreed. I think we've spoken about this before, and I know it's been mentioned before.
We have, yeah.
But it's like, it's learning when to have the debates. If there is a downbeat of a level, you know, like, let the artist have the freedom for it, you know, like, encourage that, because you want every artist and every person that works with you to feel that they can have their say, you know, in the game. And you don't want to be the guy who's like, nope, stupid idea, it's all mine. Like, you want people to feel that they can put out their ideas. So again, like, learn, you know, when to do it, and you know, if there's things that do need to be kept, then just explain why. Don't never just be like, oh yeah, this has to stay like this.
Oh yeah, give a reason. That is so critical. If you can't really say something and not justify it. You can't. It's not professional, and it can really rub people up the wrong way. You should have an intentionality and a real explanation for why certain things are a certain way. If you don't have a reason for why, and someone wants to change something, then maybe it's worth changing.
Yeah. And I think that one of the biggest struggles, this isn't with all artists, but a lot of the time, you know, because artists have tight deadlines as well, they won't play the mission. And, you know, obviously that is frustrating, I won't lie. However, if you can create like a meeting where you play it for them, you know, to help show and illustrate what you're after, because then maybe they'll see, oh, I don't think it works like this, but if we try this, we can help, you know, bring it to be there. So do try play it with your artist.
Yeah, if possible, sometimes it's not possible to do that, but if possible, that is an amazing thing to do with your art team. It creates trust, it creates memorable moments, it creates beautiful lines of sight and beautiful vistas. Really useful. Yeah. And
it's just a moment of understanding where, again, they respect your work and you get a respect for theirs as well. Like, you do automatically as a professional, but again, it's a nice moment of, okay, now I understand and now we're on the same page.
Absolutely. So useful.
Yeah. Great.
Brilliant. And then the last tip I'd like to touch on would be, you know, I love this little tip. As a level designer, I think it's really nice when you're out and about to just take little pictures of interesting spaces, interesting little elements in the environment and in the buildings and the architecture that surrounds you. So, you know, interesting bars, you know, interesting shopping centers. You'll find brilliant inspiration in the spaces that you personally explore, and because you've been there and you've actually looked around it, you can see the space in a whole different way, and it's a bit like, oh, I never thought that you could actually do that. I didn't think that was possible in a real space. But you know, those real world references, you know, they're really. Do you know what? I just like taking pictures of architecture as well, and I think that it's just really useful professionally as well.
Yeah, mate. No, I agree. Completely agree. there's not much more to say. It's just
No,
bang on right. Just bang on
in
right.
yeah, real world reference. It's just great.
Yeah,
You know.
for sure. And like that's
yeah.
the thing is like say explore those little areas. Like there was a point when not the game I'm currently working on, but a previous one where we were building like a gas station, and look, there's one near that I'd always go visit back where I was originally from, and that really helped me. I really got the layout that worked was because of that, because I'd been to this one so many times.
So you understood the space,
exactly,
know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly, mate. Exactly.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much again for coming on, mate. Because we're gonna wrap it up here. But like this has been, a great episode. You've got some great tips and a fair few of them as well, mate. So no, thank you very much.
I'm happy to speak about this stuff because when I was starting out, I found the podcast so helpful, and I just hope that the people listening and the people starting out and even people that have been doing this for a bit longer, I hope there's maybe something to glean from the things that I've experienced professionally.
Oh, for sure, man. I'm sure there is, and I'm sure people will appreciate this. I appreciate it, mate. Honestly.
Fantastic.
Awesome. So, my friend, if they want to, if the public, the people want to reach out to you, how can they do so?
So you can go to my Twitter, which is just Oliver Game Dev on Twitter, or you can just go to my website and there's my email on there, which is oliverwilliamwalker.co.uk. Feel free to tweet me, or if you want to continue the conversation or you have a question, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to have a chat and converse and talk level design or even game design moreover.
Yeah, awesome, man. All of that will be in the description down below for you guys to access as well. So that's awesome. Again, huge thank you to yourself, mate, for coming on. Really do appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
And thank you all very much. If you want to reach out to me, you can do so on Twitter @MaxPairs. If you want to email anything, you can to leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. And if you do want to support the podcast and help to make sure that we get great guests and keep the quality improving, then please head over to the Patreon, patreon.com/leveldesignlobby. Alright everyone, it's been a blast from the past, even though there was no past, but we will catch you all next time. Awesome, mate. If you shouldn't hit stuff.